I'm familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're going to do round two, trial two, because it didn't start up. Go figure. Everything was correct. Nothing needed to be changed. Rumble just didn't like the connection. And as Garret stated earlier, seems weird. Always on Fridays. That's the best time for that. Today is Friday. It is April the 26th, and we are rolling live on rumble.com. Now we are actually rolling live on rumble.com, so you guys can join us over there. Give us a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel, all you got to do is hit follow. That will allow you to get notifications. Subscribe is a little thing below it. You can throw $5 in the kitty if you are so inclined. It is a free show, unless you want to contribute, and we don't mind if you do. We're going to be talking about a lot of important stuff today. We're going to be talking about the Justice Department told Republicans to go piss off, that they can't have any of the information they want for oversight with the special counsel. That seems problematic, particularly when they're in the middle of trying to do this impeachment inquiry, or they think that there may be a situation going on there with the sitting president that they are supposed to help do oversight of. So much for the co-equal branches of government. This is something we're going to talk about today. I think our cause is not pure, and that's why we don't win. Because if you're not going to stand up for things that are important, like children and family and Western values, which are to say Christian values, then you reap what you sow. Today's going to be a big day for that, particularly in our house. Frustrating, but so be it. We're also going to be talking about the people you trust. When they betray that trust, you got two choices. You can turn on them, as you are called to do, and call out the behavior, or you could try to cover for them. We're going to cover two different instances of stories like that. You guys will like that. How about the First Amendment? Is it dead in this country? Do we actually have a First Amendment that functions? Is it something that we can have any faith in? It doesn't seem like it, based on what I see. It's pretty sad. It is quite sad indeed. So, folks, if you are ready for Friendly Friday, we'll get that started right now. Before we do, let me just say thanks to my friends over at Patriot Cooler, and they are a great group of folks who are supporting our show from the beginning, going all the way back to February of last year when nobody else was in helping us. And that includes the folks at Project Veritas who straight up abandoned our family. For whatever that's worth, this is not so much personal, but it is a character flaw when you tell people that you want to help them and then you don't. And my friend Garret O'Boyle is going to be someone who can explain about that as well. Promo code Kyle, Kyle, will be the thing you use if you go to Patriot Coolers. Again, patriotcoolers.com. Patriotcoolers.com is the website. Follow them on social media at Patriot Coolers and get yourself squared away. I actually poured this thing at 6. It's still hot. That's 2 hours and 40 minutes later to still have hot coffee in your mug. It does the job it's supposed to do. Hot coffee is the one that's the most notorious for sinking in temperature, I feel like. But this one does a great job, and it keeps us powered in. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, but I do have a Patriot Cooler full of coffee that's keeping me going. So you guys can get your own over there. Again, the website, patriotcoolers.com. All right. Should we bring on my friend Garret? I like that guy. Garret, you want to unmute yourself?
Here I am.
Here you are, Isaiah 6:8.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? What's the significance of that to both of us? I feel like we found that early on, did we not?
Yeah. Unbeknownst to us both at the time, a very prominent verse in our lives, one that I mentioned when I testified almost a year ago now. How about that? Almost a year ago, speaking about being abandoned by people who tell you that they're there to help and that they're there to further your cause. It's people in our government too, everybody. They will abandon you once they have used you and paraded you out, and they'll tell you all the things that they think are good and right and righteous, but then they will betray you. But it matters not to us, because here am I anyways. We will continue to be here. We will continue to say, send me, And the significance of that is because the prophet Isaiah, he did not want the call. He did not want to do the things God was calling him to do. But he looked to his left and he looked to his right and he said, there's nobody else. And God is calling me. Even though he recognized how wretched he was and how unworthy he was, when he first was visited, he thought he was going to die. It's all accounted in the book of Isaiah. And then he says, all right, here am I. He didn't shout
surrender.
it, you know?
Yeah,
It wasn't a war cry. It was nobody else. Here am I.
It's actually resignation to the will. That's not yours.
Yeah. Right.
I had a very similar moment my first day on the FBI job. I don't know if I ever told you this, but my first day I was picked up at 3:30 in the morning. My training agent was a SWAT guy, and he was part of a search warrant team that was going to be hitting a house for PCP guys. So we get picked up early in the morning, body armor on, straight out of the academy, haven't even been to the field office, don't have access to the building, and rolled out, did the deadly force briefing, did the op plan, stood in the rain underneath an overhang outside of a public library at 5 a.m. in a place where nobody goes to a library. And then 0600, we hit the house like you would. And he said, the boss told me to make sure that you stayed on perimeter because that's what you're supposed to do on your first day. She doesn't want you going in the house, but this is the job. Here's the RAM. I'm going to go up and knock and announce. 2 people are going to hold shield and cover. And your job is to come hit the door, which is, that's what you signed up to do. So I'm not upset about that. That was awesome.
Sounds like I might like that guy.
Yeah, he was a good dude. So I go up and I hit the door, and then I go back and drop it. And he said, once you drop the RAM, just hang in the back, and keep an eye out for whatever. You're on perimeter after that. All right. I hit the door. He calls for one. He calls for one. He calls for one. And then he calls for somebody else. And I look around, like you said, you look to your left and your right, and there's nobody else in the stack. It's just you. It's your turn to step up. I actually went in the house, turned around, covered down on a hallway. The hallway turned out to be a stairwell that was going down into the basement. I flashed my strobe light because I showed up with my own lights, as you can imagine, weapon lights, go figure, because that's where they belong if you're in a search warrant and you're pointing a gun.
Yeah. No,
for the safety of everybody, it turns out, to have an extra hand. And strobed it down there and said, if you can hear the sound of my voice, start walking towards it with your hands forward. And I had 2 surrenders. I had an 8-year-old boy and I had a 40-something-year-old man who had been a convicted felon going all the way back into the 80s, who had firearms, who had a weapon on him, who I arrested on the stairwell. And we walked him out, and then he told us that they were weapons, and he admitted to it freely. And interestingly enough, that was my first experience.
Yeah.
And they let him go.
Wait, they let him go?
Yeah. The United States attorneys in the District of DC let him go. They decided not to press charges. Then they wanted to press charges later. Then they negotiated to not press charges in the end. And so 2+ years worth of it, I testified on it. I went through a couple of hearings with them. And that was the end of it. In stark contrast to what is being done. And by the way, that was in Superior Court, which is the lower court in DC, not the district court. The district is the federal court. Interestingly enough, all of that stuff went on, and then we see what's going on in January 6th. That was the backdrop, my first day, and then the backdrop of some of my last days when the Bureau was hunting down people who were marching around inside of a building. I don't know. It's a good bookend, but it reminded me that I said, here I am from the beginning.
Yep. Interesting. It certainly is. The arc in just a few short years is certainly interesting to have seen and been a part of.
Isn't that wild? I want to bring up a story here. I want to start talking about some of this. You mentioned oversight, the people that are on our team, allegedly. So, folks, this is from CNN. Annie Grayer writing, Justice Department rebuffs Republicans' request for audio of Biden interview with special counsel. The DOJ doubled down on its decision not to release the audio files of President Biden's interview with the special counsel, Robert Hur, to the Republicans, stating that Republicans have not established a legitimate legislative purpose for demanding these records. The letter comes from DOJ Assistant Attorney General Carlos Ureta, I don't know how to pronounce his name, to the House Oversight Chair, Jim Comer, and the Judiciary Chair, Jim Jordan, which sets up a showdown with Republicans who continue to threaten to hold Merrick Garland in contempt. You want to talk about getting the backing of members of Congress when things go sideways and they have oversight of our federal agencies?
So
I'll just throw it over to you.
That article, when they say, well, DOJ says they don't have a legitimate statutory purpose. Yeah, they do. It's because statutorily they are the oversight. So you don't have to like what they want to oversee. They get to see it. They get to hear it. They get to ask for it. They get to subpoena you for it, even if it comes to that, which even that, so bizarre. It should be this simple. I'm from Congress. I have oversight over you. You give me what I ask for.
No,
But-
we have to fight it. Can we talk about qualified immunity a bit? We talked about it yesterday. I wanted to get your take on your understanding of it. I gave an example of a guy who's speeding. He's doing surveillance. He's in pursuit of his job. He's breaking laws that he's allowed to break based on the surveillance or the supremacy clause. And then he T-bones somebody, feels terrible. That person dies. He's not liable for that death, even though he will carry it with him for the rest of his life. You want to kind of talk about maybe another example or something, the way that it was explained to you as a cop and then also as a Fed?
Yeah, sure. So on the federal side, like at the FBI Academy, they call it being scoped. So there will be like a legal scope. It's basically the same as qualified immunity. Anything like this happens, this car accident type of deal, when the guy is acting within the confines of his position, or, say a police officer gets in an OIS, an officer involved shooting, there's going to be an investigation on that. And there was actually one just a handful of days ago where I used to work in Waukesha, and the wife, I think the wife, she came out and, she's blaming the police and all this. Well, the guy was in a car lot, and, I worked in the city. So like, I know this, it's this area where there's these crummy hotels where people go to do drugs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of car lots nearby, and there's thefts in the middle of the night from the car lots very often. Well, this guy was found at like 2:30 in the morning in the car lot, and four cops are on administrative leave right now because they shot and killed a guy. And he was found to not have a gun. He had a cell phone. He wasn't obeying commands.
Yep.
I don't know all the details, but I imagine he probably drew his cell phone or whatever. Continued to refuse.
Yeah, the problem with
comply.
furtive movements means that you have to take on a certain amount of risk, and you don't have to take on as much risk as you don't have to actually get yourself killed before you can return fire.
Right. And so I imagine that these guys will be, from the federal side, they would be scoped.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, they will be cleared of any wrongdoing because they were legally acting within the confines of their duty, within the confines of the law.
Yep.
And they made so this is the thing. We've talked about this before. You don't have to be right. You have to be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what it's called the MIT team, Milwaukee Metropolitan Area Investigative Team. Milwaukee is the lead investigative agency, so they'll come in and conduct their investigation and determine if the officers acted justly within the confines of the deadly force statute in Wisconsin. Now, say a cop, violates your Fourth Amendment.
Stand by. I got you on that one. I want, before we get to that, because we're going to talk about cops doing the wrong thing and basically people in general. What I want to do is I want to push over to otherwise illegal activity.
All right.
Which is an opportunity for us to kind of, again, talk about what I said yesterday. If the Justice Department, because this is the argument that the government is making against Donald Trump, that he can't just unilaterally waive the law. You want to talk about what otherwise illegal activity is and who is sort of the approval chain for that sort of thing?
Yeah. So on the FBI side, and this is something that I've done. I've done this a couple of times when I was an FBI agent. We've talked about this before. CHS, confidential human source. It's the terminology the FBI uses for a CI, a criminal informant. And so say you're working on a case and you have an informant and they're involved with illegal activity. Like the case you're working on, you're trying to find guys who are, or you're trying to get to a point where you will arrest people who are breaking the law. So they are conducting illegal activity. You are trying to arrest them for that. But you have a CHS that is involved in this and giving you information to try to further your case along. Sometimes you have to condone that they conduct illegal activity. And so there's a whole process in the FBI system that you go through. You get a bunch of people to sign off on it. And you have to be particular in the type of illegal activity that you are going to bless off your informant to do. Like you cannot say, oh yeah, you can do cocaine with them every day. Like that's one of the things.
Where does that authority come from to be able to waive off the law?
The Attorney General guidelines is the top of the chain. And then your CDC has to sign off on it. I don't remember if it has to go to headquarters or not.
But that authority is vested in the executive branch is the whole point.
Yeah.
because it comes from the Attorney General. The Attorney General's guidelines are the ways that lays out how it's done. There's a procedural way to go through it, but you actually get that authority because you work under a branch of government that's co-equal that can waive the law and choose not to enforce that law. That's the whole point of what, anyway, executive privilege looks like and what executive immunity looks like, qualified immunity in other terms. It's just worth noting, as we see Donald Trump being argued about this, this is being done in the Supreme Court. This stuff has to be discussed, but I don't think people generally understand, particularly people that are attacking Trump. It's like, who do you think has the authority to enforce law or not? The interesting thing is that when the next president steps in and wants to change the game and say, oh, you did it that way, but I'm going to do it this way. And by the way, retroactively, I'm going to decide to change that decision for prosecution and come after you. We're going to revoke that otherwise illegal activity that was engaged in at the time. That document, we're going to pull it back and we're going to come after you ex post facto. Why not?
Yeah, well, here's a great example of that. Bush era. What the frick was it called? The CIA and all their dark rooms all over the world where they're black bag and Al Qaeda types and
the black sites.
Yeah, and so then when it was looking like he was done. He did 2 terms, so it's coming to an end, and it's like, oh, we're gonna get a new president. It looks like they're gonna pull back on all this stuff. And that's exactly what happened. Retroactively, they said, oh, this was wrong. This was illegal. And you know what? I've said it before. America is not the good guys we were raised to believe we are. Just go back and look through history on things the CIA has done. That being said, I'm not entirely opposed to black bagging bad guys and pulling them to off-sites, black sites, and using enhanced interrogation techniques on them.
I've had worse done on me, and you might have too. Yeah. But advanced interrogation techniques, they're rotten, but they don't damage you physically. Well, we could have George Hill come and talk about some of those things. But a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, like being waterboarded and being drowned and some of the other stuff, like we do that to our own troops at a level that is as bad and in far less controlled environment. I've had friends die in training. I know you probably have too.
Yeah, so like the waterboarding, it's funny. I've had
we used to do it for sport, but we would do it with lemonade.
Yeah. Oh, lemonade.
The reason you do it with lemonade is because that sweet nectar of the lemonade, you're like, oh, it's good, but also I'm dying.
I can't breathe. Yeah. I've gone down memory lane a little bit this week with some guys that I served with.
Do you want to say what that is or no? Because I'm okay either way.
Yeah, we can get into that. We don't have to yet, but I forgot about this. But we used to waterboard for fun.
Right.
Like we would do it out in the field or whatever. And, it's just like, yeah, okay, let's see what this is all about. Let's see what this is like. Did we take it too far? I don't know. I don't think we did. But
we used to make it as... Yeah, we used to make the young guys put their feet up on the bunks in the barracks with no shoes on and no socks. And we'd take off a flip-flop and we'd ask them questions. And when they didn't answer them, we'd slap their feet as hard as we could with a flip-flop until they were like red or bloodied or, like swollen. And they would laugh like retards because like that's what you do when you're an enlisted idiot doing hard things for a living on purpose.
You are retarded a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit retarded, like in a good way, in like a retard strength way. I want to do an ad read, then I'm going to go exactly to where you said when people betray the trust that is given, they are given a scope of authority and they operate outside of it, or they are given a public trust and they decide to abuse it. Before we do, I want to just throw over to our sponsors, 4patriots.com. You guys can support the show by supporting yourself, by supporting your readiness at 4patriots.com/Kyle. You have 2 choices in life. Oftentimes, it is to prepare or repair. When you are looking out and seeing corruption, when you are looking out and seeing evil in the world, and you are looking and seeing a very imperfect government that is not doing a great job of oversight, it means that things will step over the boundaries. And if you want to keep those things at bay, the easiest way to do it is start with the basics that you can control. 4patriots.com/Kyle. Pick up some emergency food, pick up some emergency cool gadgets. I have many. This is sort of a thing I do, but at the very minimum, you want calories, you want water, you want power supplies for your communication devices. And you can do all those things. You can pick up solar generators and so on by going to 4patriots.com/Kyle. That lets them know that we sent you. And then anything that you pick up is just said, they say thanks to us. There's no transactional dollar amount in there. Some of the things are discounted because of that. You'll actually see a landing page. Some of the things are not. Check out 4Patriots. All right, Garrett, I'm going to bring this thing up real quick too. because that was the first story about Joe Biden. How about this one? This one probably is going to get you in a place that will get you riled up. Coming out of the New York Post. The New York Post says 2 off-duty NYPD cops arrested for alleged sexual assault of an intoxicated woman. Quote, "Let's go, bro. She's waking up." The victim was between the 2 officers, with each man holding her up on the arm as she was unable to stand or walk on her own, as the video shows. Interesting how this is something that just popped up today or this week. Further footage shows the 4 are getting into a car and pulling up to a female acquaintance's apartment where the 2 cops carry the victim inside. The woman was being held upright with her eyes closed, her mouth open. She was unable to stand on her own and constantly falling, says the Internal Affairs Bureau investigator in the complaint. They were charged with first-degree criminal sexual act, first-degree and third-degree sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, and forcible touching. That's what happens when you touch people and you are holding somebody that is too intoxicated. And isn't it interesting when you have a position of public trust? Go ahead and just let that one unload with both barrels.
Oh, yeah. Man, I feel the rage deep in my chest right now because, man, even before I had kids, and as many of you probably know, I have only daughters. I have 4 daughters, and I think of it now from the position of a dad, but I also think of it from the position of a cop, and from the position of an FBI agent, and from the position of a person who went to war for this country. And, oh man, does it make me mad. Oh, it makes me mad. And I'll just go here because otherwise I'm likely to go off the handle. And it's funny, Kyle, because I texted you this last night. Romans 13, verse 3. "For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." And here you have cops, police officers in this nation who are the wrongdoer. And look, I get it. We are all sinful. We have a sin nature that we need to resist. We need to turn to Christ. We need the Holy Spirit to indwell us so we can do what is right for God. And here you have a government. And look, I know this is just one example of 2 cops who are doing wrong. But guess what? This type of thing is happening all over. It's not just cops, and it's not just sexual assault. It is our government writ large at this point. They have turned Romans 13 on its head. And now they do bear the sword in vain. And they come after you when you do good, when you do what is right, when you do what is just, especially when it's in the eyes of the Lord. They come at you hard. These cops.
Yeah, which is acceptable to us if that's going to be the way that it comes down. I'd rather be on the side of right than be on the side of evil that's convenient. Right. However, it's, as you said, it's much broader than cops. It's our news media that engages in malfeasance. It is our medical professionals that engage in malfeasance. Whenever we hear about a nurse or a doctor that was abusing patients, we talked about Larry Nassar's story earlier this week. Yeah. The abuse of trust can only happen when you actually had trust in that person to begin with, and when you decide to weaponize it against the people that are supposed to be able to rely on you. That's what betrayal looks like. I've been using that word quite a bit. The FBI has betrayed this country in the way that they are operating. I got some information last night. The FBI intends to just try to come after me to try to rouse up some charge. Luckily, the government is full of people that are mediocre retards, and they're dealing with people that are probably paying attention at a better level. You and I know what they're capable of. None of us are going to let our guard down on these assholes. Sorry, I'm spiced up because I got less sleep than I wanted to.
I don't blame you, man.
But what's important is all of these people ceded that authority. And a lot of people had 2 options. And I said this last night on a podcast because I was sitting up late hanging out with Sean Witzman, who's a good dude. There's 2 paths that were in front of everybody. Path number 1, question everything. The exact opposite. Actually, I've got it on the wall. Look, I have it on the wall here, folks. I want to believe. That is the nature of humanity. It is hopeful. We want to believe. That's why I have it. It's a Fox Mulder reference because I think it's fun. But I want to believe lets us know that we all inherently want to think that people are good and will do good. The other piece is that we have to be skeptics in the world because the world is full of sin.
Yep.
And we have to defend the innocence at the cost of your want to believe. And if you can't step up for women and children and the innocence of childhood and the innocence of young women specifically and their honor, like, get out, get away from me. I don't want you to win. The reason people keep crying, I have all these people, and I don't give a shit who they are. I don't care how big their following is. I will stand toe to toe on what I stand for every single day. But what's amazing to me, Garrett, is all these people saying, can't you just stop the infighting? Can't we focus on saving this country? You know what? Fuck that. Because this country doesn't belong saved by people who have impure purpose.
Right. You can't save it. If you are going to condone that type of behavior because the person is quote unquote on your side. No. That person is not on your side. That person is on the side of evil if they are doing those type of things. And so I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter. And I don't care what persona they put on public facing. If you are doing things that are wicked behind closed doors, or you think they're behind closed doors, and you're, in one way you're a sexual deviant, or you're a pedophile, or you're, just, I don't know, name whatever sin you want. And again, I'm not without sin. Do not get me wrong about that. However, we are also called to pick up our cross and follow him and deny ourselves, deny yourself. And most people in this country who say, I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, I want to do what's good, I want to do what's right, they refuse to deny themselves. And what does that truly mean? It means to deny your flesh. 1 John chapter 2, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, boastful pride of life. That is your pillar of sin, those three things. And most people refuse to deny them. Me too. I'm guilty of it as well. Do not get me wrong again. But most people lean into the sin and they say, no, it's fulfilling to me. I care about me. It's a self-gratifying society. And until a majority of people recognize that is why our nation is literally crumbling before our eyes, because we want to fulfill our own lusts, that you're on the side of wrong then.
That's right.
So no, you aren't on my side. I'm not on your side.
Yeah.
And if that only means there's 2% of us, fine.
So be it.
Then I vote for the sweet meteor of death in 2024.
Yeah,
because
we've been talking about that behind the scenes, that our vote is not for any president. It's for a meteorite to take out all of Washington, D.C., which is corrupt and disgusting. Sadly, that there'll be innocent lives in that too. So that's just that's hyperbolic frustration. Let me illuminate people a little bit about some of the thought process that you and I have had for years. Because if you can't question yourself and your own motives, I think you're a sociopath. If you think when everybody is stacked against you and you are doing what what you're convicted is correct, if you don't have a moment of self-reflection where you question, is this righteous? Am I doing what is actually correct? Or am I serving something else? Then you are insane. That is not a way that normal people operate. That's not a way that good people operate. And so one of the things that you and I have gone through for the last 2 years is whenever we had information that implicated our federal agency, federal agents, people who were doing immoral things, whether they were politicians, whether they were involved in government officials, or whether they were law enforcement or media or anything like that. The first question was, did I screw this up? Which should be the basic question every investigator has. It's the question of skepticism. Is it possible that the thing that I believe, based on what I've seen and what I probably want to believe, because I'm weak and I'm a human being, did I get this wrong? Was it always foolish to stand against the vaccines? Was I not actually standing up for a conviction? Was I being whispered to by the father of lies who does that thing that says, you're righteous, you're doing the good thing, carry on? And a lot of us listen to that and we go, okay, let me just take a time out. Let me step back, right? In our firearms training, one of the things that you and I had in common is that they would teach us to fire, to clear the weapon by dropping the magazine, locking the slide to the rear, checking to make sure that there was no brass sitting in that chamber, and then stopping, looking away somewhere else, clearing your visual palette and looking back at that with fresh eyes and say, I've looked in here once, I'm turning away and I'm looking back again. Is there a round in the chamber before I close this thing so I don't have an accidental discharge? If you obey the rules and you do things properly, you will not accidentally fire off something, in a dangerous way. In the same way, every single time that we've come forward with whistleblower disclosures, there's a constant discussion of these people are evil. Are they evil? Are we screwing this up? Did we understand what is happening here? Mm-hmm. And then overwhelmingly, And I can say this happened dozens of times, like at a shocking rate, which is why my faith is stronger than it was when I was younger. And certainly stronger than when I was talking to you at the beginning of all this.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah,
I would get pointed phone calls that had no reason to pop up from people I hadn't heard from in a year or two. People that I went to the academy with would call me out and share with me information that confirmed or even worse information related to the agency we were going after. And I'd be like, God is always sending signals to us. The reason why the prophets didn't want to do it is because the prophets typically end up really, really badly off.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Did any of the prophets like end up as like glorious men with lots of wealth and power?
No, not that I know of. My favorite example of that is Jeremiah. You know, it's not accounted in the Bible, but the tradition, the church tradition has it that nobody listened. No one freaking listened. And again, that's actually one of my problems is people don't listen. And it's with Congress, it's with, whatever. People don't listen. Or they just go on with their lives. They're just going after their own desires. And he fulfilled his commission. And this is why they call him the weeping prophet. So there's the book of Jeremiah and there's the book of Lamentations. I mean, he wrote it. That a lament is crying out to the Lord, like, why? Fix this. When will this end?
I think a lot of Americans are there right now, and they don't know what the answer to that is. And the answer they're choosing to are false idols, which is what today's thumbnail is.
Yeah. And anyways, long story short, nobody listens. Israel gets conquered. A bunch of them get shipped off to Egypt, including him. And he continues to preach, to prophesy to them. And they said, we had it with you. And they stoned him to death. And it's like, well, okay, here am I. Send me. If it comes to that,
My kids and I are going through children's Bible stories. We've done the kids' Bible stories, which is basically the story of the Old Testament and the New, told in very simple terms, selectively picking easy stories for them to understand to get the progression of what happens. And I'm overwhelmed because this is the third time I think we're going through it. I'm overwhelmed with the pattern. The pattern is the same for all of human history. It's so easy to grasp. Like, God comes to man and says, here's what needs to be done. Man says, I got it. I'm on it. Then man goes, I'm kind of bored with this. I'm going to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And then God says, let me remind you what you are supposed to be doing because you are not. And then horrible things ensue, right? Driven out of your lands, exiled, plagues, destruction of your temple, scattering of the people. And then somebody comes back and brings the message that people are redeemed. For a generation or two, they remember what they're supposed to be doing. Then they screw it up again, and the pattern continues to repeat. Yeah. Because we are all sinful, we're all prideful. And as we talked about earlier this week, there's a significant amount of hubris. I want to play you some hubris here. Everybody who's crying about, oh, you're releasing some private information. You know what? Number one, it wasn't private. It came from employees. When you tell your employees, because you are so proud of your sexual conquest that they have to go through your stuff, then that's pride. But this is also pride when you're an actor saying things that sound really good. I bet he storyboarded this crap out. It's really hard when you actually have to live up to your own standards if you are not a person who generally lives up to standards.
And everyone always asks me, how do you, James O'Keefe, they say, aren't you worried someone's going to infiltrate you? And I would always say, no, I'm not worried because there's nothing that I'm doing. Yeah, but that's not how they see the world.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because they got a million things to hide. They got skeletons in their closet up the wazoo.
There it is. It's impossible to shame James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. This was written by the Daily Beast. In 2017, after the Washington Post attempted to expose Project Veritas on a sting, he said that his war against the mainstream media, we're not going to surrender. Trust me about that. He's not. In the fact-based era before Donald Trump, when presidents didn't have to embrace pernicious conspiracy fantasies, these are funny, and retweet Muslim-bashing neo-fascists. These guys are great, aren't they? Project Veritas might not have survived. At a minimum, it would have sustained severe damage. Some of the things I read about was that he was actually trying to set up a CNN reporter, which I didn't know about, but that happened back in 2011. He decided to set up a boat full of sex toys and lure a reporter who seems like a nice lady. She's probably on the left, but he was going to set her up and then show like, aha, got you. You're in a boat full of sex toys that I set up and you got there. No shame.
That's a weird setup.
It's a really weird setup. It didn't work, it turned out. Because people thought it was immoral, illegal, or unethical, and they decided not to do that because it's not journalism to just capture people in moments that are revealing. Kind of like when you get a girl drunk who's underage at a bar, and then you decide to ask her questions and feel on her breasts when she's too drunk to consent. The same way we just showed those police officers who just got charged with sexual battery, sexual abuse, and sexual contact and forcible contact.
Yeah, and I looked this up. this morning because, I was a cop in Wisconsin. So I don't know laws elsewhere, but I was like, I bet there's a law that covers this. And wouldn't you know, Kyle, there is in Washington, D.C., it's chapter 4. It's 22-404 that covers this. And it's any intentional touching is a misdemeanor. So it escalates from there. And this is sexual in nature. She's drunk. He said, they all have skeletons in their closet up the wazoo. Well, it turns out so does he, because he's a sexual deviant, because he cannot resist. Like,
I've already had women hit me up and say that this has been going on for years. This is just one that he filmed himself. That's why this was a big deal. It's on my Twitter page if you guys are curious what we're talking about. But he filmed it himself, and he thought it was good. And the reason that he thought it was good is because it was going to give him access to Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader. You can hear him going on and on and on about it. He tried to use sexual misconduct and getting a girl drunk at a bar to go after the Senate Majority Leader to expose what? Like nothing. She's a student intern.
It's bizarre. Like I'm trying to like muddle it through in my brain. Like, okay, I get that your goal is to get to Chuck Schumer. How is this going to get you there?
Because he's never done a real operation, because he's never done what you and I did and has no training in it, because that's not how you ethically go and take down people that are evil. That's why.
And I think on top of it, I don't think that was actually his goal that night. I think his goal was to fondle a young, pretty woman.
I talked to a pretty significant media person, and they said it's both, but yeah, they think that the penis led on that day. What is the penis mightier? Isn't that Sean Connery's thing?
Yeah.
Another fun video here.
Charge for 1,000 Trebek.
I'm seeing like one or two people in the chat are like, I don't understand. This is wasting my time. It's personal. No, it's not personal. I mean, it is, because I'm a father. But if you want to support evil with your money, if you want to fund that, because that was all funded. That trip was funded. That bar tab was funded with donor money. Whether it came from his salary that he pays himself for his 501c3, but he gets paid on as a nonprofit.
Well, and again, this actually ties back into what we've been talking about a large portion of today already. It is not separate. You cannot separate these two things. Someone like this person is not on your side, quote unquote, if their alleged separate life is filled with deviance.
That's right.
That's not okay. You are never going to win if these are your people, if these are your false gods, if these are your idols that you want to prop up and say, well, they're doing so much for the movement or whatever. No, you are never going to win. This type of behavior will never be glorified. It is not righteous.
It's really simple too. It's called operational morality, what people are operating in. Operational morality is essentially the ends justify the means. If you're willing to say that the outcome justifies the way that you got to the outcome, and if you need to use sexual immorality, if you need to use coercion, threat of force to get your way, that's actually what gangsters do. That's actually what the FBI has been doing, that we have been calling out universally, right? We've been calling out a absolute failure of standards and ethics in our law enforcement agencies, because they are using tools they should not have access to, because they're ignoring the constitutional oath. If you don't operate in good faith, then it is on you if you get an outcome that is favorable, but you're a piece of shit in the process of it. And this is what we're talking about. I want to play this video too, because I have a couple of these. These were sent to me overnight.
Suspicion. Someone once said, James, you're in the confirming suspicions business. Yes. It's not that this shocks you, but to hear someone say it, that his departure was part of the handshake of the settlement agreement. And by the way, people don't know this, Steve, but I sued the New York Times for defamation. I got past motion to dismiss while the head of Veritas, and we were headed into discovery in that litigation. Now, I'm not in charge there anymore, but it's interesting to know, we were about to get text messages of New York Times reporters. So I'm fine to live in a world where all of our text messages are revealed. I'd love to see the texts of New York Times reporters doing their job. And by the way, it was the same law firm, same law firm that represented Dominion, represented PV.
Hey, so he's okay with text messages being exposed. Like, let's put it all out there and see who we are. If people exposed your text messages to you and me, it's a lot of frustration. Nobody would find it particularly shocking.
No, not at all. We talk about most of it when you have me on. So.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know what? I heard something last night that I'd never heard before, and I want to drop it on you. If you live a deviant life in public, then you're welcome to have one in private as well. But if you live a virtuous life in public and you have a deviant life in private, you will eventually come to terms with that. Yeah. And I think that's very true.
Right. I do too. I mean, sometimes it takes years and years and years and years and years, and I'll give you, I don't care. I'll give you a personal story of this.
Do it.
My parents split up when I was like 17. My dad left, and then like the divorce dragged out for a few years. Turns out, so they had been married 19 years, I think. Like we were getting close to their 20th anniversary. Turns out he'd been cheating on her since they were dating. They dated for like 3 years, and then it was on and off, I guess, like forever. And it's like, I didn't know that until the end, and it's like it catches up with you. It will. It always does. Your sin always will catch up with you. I'm sure everybody listening can point to an example in their own life. I can point to examples of my own sin nature where I'm trying to subvert it and hide it, and then it gets found out. I mean, that's just the way of things. I think that's by design.
Yeah, I love the sort of false honesty that people like to bring up. All right, let me throw this up here. You guys, you can support the program. If you are still listening, if you're still with us, Mad Hat Jerky is the company that we've been working with, madhatjerky.com/Kyle. That's Matt with 2 T's, hat with 1 T, jerky.com. They have a taste it, love it, or your money back guarantee. I didn't know about that. That's pretty cool. 20% off with promo code Kyle, KYLE, will save you 20%. A lot of you guys have gone out and bought these. Nothing but rave reviews from our listeners, and I know that's the case from people who try it. Why? Because it's really good. That's why I actually like endorsing them. madhatjerky.com/Kyle, promo code Kyle. Yeah, we have to do some ad reads. That's how this thing continues to go on. We're not taking anybody's money without their permission. Turns out there's no government funding involved in this nonsense. Same story with our buddies over at MyPillow. You guys can support Mike Lindell and the MyPillow Corporation, which will pop up on the screen momentarily. Again, mypillow.com/Kyle, always kind of the same way. Put the /Kyle on the end there. Use promo code Kyle for up to 50% off bedding and sheets and slippers and slides. Garrett, are you a slides guy? I feel like you could be. You're muted.
Yeah, I'd be down with those for sure.
I was just curious if you already wore them. I know a lot of like big meaty guys that wear slides. Anyhow, mypillow.com/Kyle and the promo code Kyle at checkout saves you the same as any other person that you find on social media. If you guys want to do that, Mike Lindell probably would not condone this type of behavior. I'll be interested to see where people go with it. You're going to see some factionalization right now, folks. What I did want to talk about though was First Amendment. Let's do a little piece on that. This is a story coming out of Russia. Russian journalist detained for posts criticizing the military. His lawyer says the journalist for the Russian edition of Forbes has been detained on charges of spreading false information about the Russian military. This is what happens when you allow the government to be the arbiter of truth. We don't believe in that here. You don't let the government, you let the chips fall where they may. This guy's going to appear on court. He's going to be facing up to 10 years in prison if convicted. And then also, I kind of brought a little contrast right here. And I want to see if you see the same parallel, Garrett. The House Speaker, this is coming from CBS. House Speaker calls for Columbia University president's resignation amid ongoing protests. House Speaker Mike Johnson was met with large boos when he visited Columbia University on Wednesday, calling for the resignation of the institution's president, as the campus has been roiled in accusations of anti-Semitism and ongoing pro-Palestinian protests. Quote, I am here today joining my colleagues and calling on the president, Shafrik, to resign if she cannot immediately bring order to this chaos. And they screamed, we can't hear you. What do you think about a member of Congress who also swears an oath to the Constitution weighing in on free protests and calling for resignations of people in private universities?
I think he should shut up and stay out of it. Like,
isn't that what the First Amendment said? Shall make no law.
Right. And actually, while he's at it, maybe don't send like $90 billion to Ukraine. But hey, I guess that's a little too much.
How about funding the FBI? Should we fund the FBI? Is that helpful?
No, not helpful at all.
The guy, this is the same group that is like Speaker Johnson is the one that is theoretically the guy running the House. The House has 2 oversight committees, Oversight and Judiciary, both of which basically were ineffectual. And they gave all the money that the FBI asked for. They said, yeah, no problem. We got you. Yeah. By the way, here's some money for people that are in foreign nations that have nothing to do with America. I just keep saying they're America last, but that makes me America only at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think we all should be as Americans. Oh, go figure.
Isn't that the cycle too? Like there used to be there's always been cycles of isolationism that America swings through. So we go through this interventionalist cycle. But folks, you want to talk about cycles? Human beings are simple creatures, and we follow the same patterns over and over again. It doesn't matter whether it's biblical with the prophets or you're talking about political interests. Right now, we have this massive interventional idea that we're going to go out and put money everywhere. We're going to be the world police. This has been going on since I was a kid. They made a movie about it that was a joke called Team America, World Police, right?
So good. Such a good movie.
Yeah, fantastic satire.
Even today, it's still good.
Oh, yeah, it totally holds up because it's puppets. The problem with being an interventionalist is that at some point in time, you stop paying attention to what's going on at home, and that always inevitably leads towards isolationism. You go back and you go, screw everybody else, and we figure out what's going on in my own house. I can't keep everybody else's yard tended and mowed when my yard is full of weeds and all kinds of invasive species. So we are back at the time when we need to be looking at that. And Mike Johnson can't figure out how to focus on anything. And, anyway, going out there and spending time at Columbia University, does it get him some political points? Maybe. How about fix the things you can actually fix, dude?
Yeah. And then here's like another part of the problem, I think. So you might know this to some degree. Like while I've been suspended, like I've looked into police states over history, like the Stasi and a bunch of ones like I can't even pronounce the name because they're like Romanian or whatever. And we're in that cycle too, because like you just mentioned about Mike Johnson and his committees, you allegedly have oversight over DOJ, which gives you oversight over FBI, DEA, ATF, all these 1811. So the gun toters, so the people with the guns, you allegedly have oversight over them. As we talked about earlier with that article you pulled up about DOJ saying, no, we're not going to comply with you wanting the audio of the Hunter Biden, deposition or whatever with the special counsel. We're not going to comply. Yeah, you don't actually have oversight, Mike. So maybe why don't you try to work on that before it's way too late? And you know what? It might be already. But no, I'm going to go and toot my horn about some woke
like university.
Like, who cares, dude?
Right.
Who cares? Let those institutions crumble too, because they're going to. Because the weight of this woke stuff, it's going to force these places to crumble at some point.
It's totally crazy to me that this is the thing that we are wasting, like utterly unserious people who refuse to pay attention to the things that matter, that they're charged with doing. So why not distract the American people? Why not put on a show? We have a lot of actors out there acting. I got another one of these little videos here because I queued it up. This was something that was sent to me. The thing is that if you go out in the public and you speak a lot, your words have to be consistent with your actions. As you and I both know, we knew this the minute that we started talking publicly, that we would be scrutinized. If you can't live up to it, like, yeah, am I a jerk sometimes? For sure. Like, I'm not very nice.
I was fallible, man.
I was never very nice. Like, we're combatants. We signed up voluntarily to do violence in multiple different places, both foreign and domestic. That was the mission set. Then there are some people that are built and charged with that, and the burden of that is so heavy that some people don't make it through the other end of this life with their sanity intact. Right. Like we both know people who, and I know you've had a recent personal loss, which we don't have to talk about a lot, but that's not unfamiliar. My first couple weeks at the academy, I found out the guy that recruited me to the Air Force he climbed into a bottle and walked out into the waves and floated off and died. And he was a special operator with 2 silver stars for 30 days worth of action. He was awarded 2 silver stars. The guy should have been given probably the Air Force Cross. I mean, he was a flipping hero. He was also a savage and a killer, a professional, right? And he wasn't able to go back to war, and his brother was killed by just a failure of mechanics. And his brother went down in one of the CH-47, not the CH-47, is that what it is, the Chinooks?
Yeah.
Yeah, he went down on
UHCH, there's a couple different.
He went down on one of the 47s with the SEAL Team 6 guys, and he wasn't able to go back and avenge his brother. And so he walked into the waves, and I found that out while I was at Quantico, and it's like, dude, like that guy was kind of one of my heroes. Was he a savage? Yes. Was he a nice person all the time? Rarely, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't even know him that well, other than we spent like a lot of time professionally making things happen. It was the reason why I spent 4 years of my life in the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's rough, man, and it's been something I've been thinking about a ton this week because, as you know, a guy I went to Iraq with, he killed himself earlier this week, and that's always hard. It's always hard. I guess I don't have the data to back this up, but I think my platoon, that I went to Iraq with has been hit harder than most. We have lost 4 since we got back from Iraq. Only one of them in combat. People might have seen my bracelet before. That's for the guy we lost in combat, who was awesome. He's like this guy you were just talking about. He was an enlisted Ranger. He had a Ranger tab, a Sapper tab. He was in Ranger Battalion. He had everything. You know, he got up to E6, then he commissioned, and he was our platoon leader. And he was
stud.
He was as hard as woodpecker lips, as they say. You know, and awesome guy. And like, I remember my last conversation with him, and then the next thing I heard, he was killed. And then 3 other guys, one in a motorcycle accident, one with a heart attack, and one just, I got the call on Sunday or Monday night that it was suicide. And I have my questions about the other 2 on what was involved there. But you know what? Maybe I'll never know, and it doesn't matter. All I know is I have 4 friends of mine who are dead.
That's
and
right. That's betrayal, by the way. That's what that looks like when your government puts you on a mission and then doesn't follow through on it, because we've got non-funding of the VA, but we got bullshit going on with our FBI stepping up and looking into veterans. Like, imagine going and spending 20 years at war as a nation, like my entire generation, your entire generation, spent time, signed up to do this thing. Then they come back in, and then you tell them that the Betsy Ross flag that I have on my wall over my shoulder here is a sign of militia violent extremism, and that they're the actual problem because they learned how to do violence on behalf of this country. And meanwhile, we got idiots, and I can't get away from it today because I'm locked in it, so just bear with me, folks. This is why it's my show, I guess. I'm going to just lean into this. When someone starts using Christian imagery and they're doing evil things in their private life, talking about the cross they have to bear, this acting bullshit, it's
blasphemy, man.
It is also
blasphemy.
It's also a betrayal of the people that actually live this kind of stuff and have to go out there and try to actually meet evil where it is. So I'm going to share this one too, because all of these things are the same. They're the same hubris. It's fatal pride, as the Greeks used to call it. It's the fatal pride that humbles you in front of the gods. And Christians often call it demonic pride. It's when you put yourself above what is correct. And the cost of it is almost inevitably your life. And if not your life, then it is later on.
Yeah, I'm going to respond to your monologue. I mean, these are the times that try men's souls, Megan. And it seems like a ripping of the fabric of what it means to be an American. I saw your monologue there, and they're releasing on camera breaks of Tucker being human. Nothing, I think, that's really that outrageous. But I suggest we level the playing field and release the text message of New York Times reporters. It may sound a little bit of whataboutism, but the reality is Tucker was removed from Fox News. I was removed from the company that I founded 2 months ago.
Right.
And anybody who thinks differently or exposes the people in the administrative state or exposes the 3-letter agencies are targeted, smeared. They try to humiliate you. So we're human beings. And nobody's perfect. You put anybody under a magnifying glass, anybody, any human being in the world, you're going to find something, I guess, maybe slightly embarrassing. The question is, does the public have a right to know it? And people like Tucker or people like me, I suppose that's our cross to bear, that any text message we've ever sent in our entire life, we put on the front page of the New York Times. Okay. By the way, I'm okay with that. I signed up for that. I'm not complaining about that. But if that's the world that we choose to live in, which we do, we live in America and the public has a right to know, then why aren't we putting the New York Times' text message?
Or what about Irina Brigade?
That's his cross-eyed bear, and he signed up for this. Yes? I heard it.
He said it.
Are we accountable for our words or not?
Absolutely we are. Absolutely we are. Not only are we going to be accountable to the people we say those words to, we're going to be accountable to God as well. It's funny, Kyle. I know I've been a little not as consistent with my Substack posts lately, but I posted one today, and it's mostly about those guys I just mentioned.
Yeah.
But I included a verse from Proverbs in there early on. It says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." And there are many verses like that talk about our words. and we will be held accountable. And in this era that we live in, our written word, our text, I mean, I agree with him there. It is in this era, if your text messages are publicly available or your messages to your company are publicly available, post them on the front page of the New York Times. He said so. So I don't know why people have so many problems with it all of a sudden.
It's also interesting that somebody who made a living for basically exposing people, private conversations, private times, private moments, private sharings in private situations, is upset about this. Look, he filmed the video that I put out today. He thought it was good. This guy's trash. Guys, if you want a movement that's going to save this country, and I hear people going like, why are we infighting? I keep seeing this. I am not on your team. My team cares about what's right, even if it's inconvenient. That's the whole reason why I don't have a bunch of FBI agents cheering me on, and I'm not still working in the Albuquerque field office doing the job that I actually liked doing, which was going after bad guys on an Indian reservation. There's nothing more simple than that. It's totally apolitical. You simply show up when somebody rapes one of the girls there, or some girl lies about being raped and tries to do it because she wants property or money or something else from somebody else, or she's got some social media garbage going on and she made up a story that is completely false and made up. We find out what the truth looks like. That's not political. That's what I wanted to do. I lived on a really, really nice property. We had 2 acres. My kids could watch the sunrise over the mountains. They could watch it set and show up and light up the hills. I could see Mexico from my backyard, not Sarah Palin style. I literally saw the lights of Mexico. We were sitting at a high point, a glimmering little place on the hill, and we had an entire city blocked out by a dark mountain so we could see every star. I had shadows where I lived, Garrett, from the moon and from the stars when there was no moon. You could walk around in my yard. You could get a shadow. I could put on night vision and navigate across the hundreds of miles from where I lived because it was so dark and it was so uninhabited. It was epic. I could shoot in my backyard if I didn't tell anybody, and I used a can and killed like a coyote. I had neighbors that hit me up and were awesome people. Retired military, retired law enforcement, current law enforcement. It was an ideal situation, and it was good people, and my kids had friends. We had to sell the damn house. Because I didn't just say, well, we want people to stand with us and they need to just back us up. No, we don't back up shit that is evil. And it costs you something. So what? Mm-hmm. Some of us actually know what the cross-eyed bear looks like. Some people are running a LARP. And it's not just O'Keefe, for the record. There's a lot of people on the political right that are full of shit on the way that they attempt to do this. They're so scared. They've known about this guy for years and the way that he operates. I've had people hit me up and say, yeah, I knew he was scum. Really? Where were you then? Because you enabled other people giving money and funding his things that he did, and he went out there and hurt folks. Makes me want to puke. Like I said, I don't want to win if that's the way to win. I'll just SIE is what we used to call it in the military. Self-initiated elimination. I won't play.
Ring the bell.
I quit. Yeah, I'm out if that's the case. I don't want anything to do with it. And then Sweet Meteor of Death is also, preferable. Yeah. All right, you wanted to do some closing thoughts? I'll throw the merch store up, and why don't you do that and then let people know how you're spending that. All right, well, there it is. The-expendables.com. You can use the promo code Kyle. We'll go to Garrett. Garrett will tell you what kind of stuff. What are you making out there? You making anything new? I see hats behind you.
No, those aren't new. Those are the old ones. You know what? I have been thinking of a new idea for a hat. I'm not sure though. We'll see. I might just run this patch that's on these hats. I just might run that back one more time. People seem to really like them. So we'll see about that. But other than that, the newest is still the TKSS shirt, which I got to say, man, I love those colorways and that dark gray ink on there. I think it's pretty cool. But hey, I designed it. So, hey, maybe that's
I feel good about it too. I wore it yesterday. I actually liked it quite a bit. Very cool.
Yeah. And then the Make Whistleblowers Great Again. Those are the newest things. As you know, I've got tons of ideas, man. I got all sorts of stuff drawn up already, but I got to get through some.
Yeah, it takes forever. Plus, you got stock and inventory we got to get out there. All right, folks.
So once we get rid of some stuff, I'll, whatever.
If you want to support Garrett specifically, directly, you guys can go out there and buy from the merch store. That's his wife's company. No big deal. Your wife got triangulated into all this just because she's part of you, and mine did last night just because she's a part of me. So be it. If you guys want to get the shirt that represents our show, it doesn't even profit me. That's the best part of it. I actually love having profit going to other people just because of what we're doing out here. You guys can support that. And then let me also say thanks to my buddies over at Catholic Vote who continue to fund us, who know what we're about, we had a conversation with the president of Catholic Vote, and he just said, I feel bad when I have impure thoughts. This guy's out there using donor money to go try to hook up with chicks and fly around the country country and do this kind of thing. CatholicVote.org is where you can support them. You can go and get The Loop, which is a great email. It'll keep you up to date with useful conservative news and a perspective that is, I think, very fair and Christian and consistent. And the people that work there are good people. I was overwhelmingly impressed with what good people are there. You guys can find their hot media takes on social media at Catholic Vote as well. And you can support them at the website, CatholicVote.org/The Loop. All right, Garrett, hold on. I'm going to put us back on the screen. That's pretty much it for today, man. I didn't want to get too much deeper into that. We've done plenty. I think I'm going to tune out social media. I don't want to see people apologizing for this kind of behavior. So go out there and wrangle your boys, ladies and gentlemen. MAGA, clean it up.
It's really disappointing to see, like, I guess I thought through the last few years, like COVID and Biden, that more people were truly like waking up. And I guess I thought maybe more of like a spiritual awakening and coming to realize like, oh, the root of our problems are the royal we, our sin, the national sin. And it turns out that people are actually totally okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the SMOD eventually.
The SMOD is the sweet meteorite of death.
Yeah.
All right,
it's so funny. I love it.
All right.
One last thing for me.
Please.
Lastline.substack.com. It's free unless you don't want it to be, but it's free. I intend to always have it free and available for anybody who wants to read it. The one I posted today, probably the most meaningful one I've done. I hope I did it justice, but it's called "Only the Dead Have Seen the End of War," and I'd appreciate it if all of you would head over there, give it a read, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I 100% agree with it. I started reading it. I'll finish reading it today. If you guys haven't read Garrett's Substack, it is thoughtful in the same way that Garrett is thoughtful. He puts a lot of thought and time into it. I know it's an emotional burden to be able to put this stuff out. We may even get somebody new to do the voiceovers because sometimes it's hard to read your own thoughts when they're so raw. And a lot of the stuff that you put out there is incredibly personal, but it also is a time of, it's like a vulnerability that may need to be out there in order to move people's hearts and minds. Right. That's kind of how we do it, yeah?
Yep. Anyway. Again, it's here am I, send me,
The last question that came out of the chat there was asking whether or not there's going to be a magnet version of the lapel pin so as to not put holes in things. Interesting, they brought that up. Do you want to, once we exhaust the supply?
Yeah. So yes, there will be an upgraded version eventually after the Glenn Beck influx. So I got a bunch of pins. I probably have a few hundred left. They are the #1 seller, but I do have some, what would you call it? Like test samples of ones with a magnet.
Prototype.
And so prototype, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very well. Prototype. And so, yes, eventually at some point as the suspendables continue to move throughout the ether and all of you continue to join, and once the lapel pins are gone, there will be an updated version, and I think you all will like it.
I'm reminded of something from The Lords of Discipline, which was one of the books by Pat Conroy that I read probably 150 times cover to cover. I've read it so many times, it's disgusting. I used to just pick it up at any point and just read for as long as I was feeling like it. Then I'd put it back down and do the same thing. It's the most thumbed paperback I ever had. I got it when I was in high school. And one of the things about there is that they talk about an honor code at the Citadel, which they called the Institute, but it's the Citadel. It's his military academy experience, and it's a very fraternal place. And the honor code said that you will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. We have a responsibility for the conduct of others that we tolerate, that we enable, that we overlook, and that we allow. And that's a strong message that has always sat with me. It's why it was such a good book. If you guys have ever seen it, Prince of Tides was another one he did. He wrote a lot about his autobiographical experience of just kind of being a guy. And almost all of his messages ring very true to me. Catholic, he's an Irish guy. In a lot of ways, he looks a lot like a James O'Keefe character, but he was someone that actually understood. He was formed properly, apparently. So that is what it is. All right, I'm done for the day. You done?
I'm done.
Folks, we had a little rough start here on the technology, but we do appreciate you guys joining the Kyle Seraphin Show. If you want to support us, if you want to go to sponsors, you can always do that by coming to the page here on Rumble, giving us the thumbs up, giving us a subscribe. If you are unfollowing me because you don't like me being upset with people who are trash, you don't need to announce this. It's not an airport. Just knock it off. Go away. Bye. I don't care. I don't want to be around people that don't have strong convictions about what's right. You guys can support us by going to CatholicVote.org, forpatriots.com/Kyle, Patriot Coolers, and Matt Hat Jerky and My Pillow, all the promo code Kyles when you go to those websites. And that is a financial way if you guys are looking for products. You don't need to. The show is free. It will continue to be free. It doesn't cost you a penny to do it. Thanks for joining us for the day. I mean that very sincerely. The show exists because the audience. It gets me up in the morning, even when I'm exhausted and I don't want to be here, which I kind of don't want to be here today. I'll be honest with you. And I think all of you guys can kind of understand where that comes from. We'll see you again on Monday with fresh shoes, with fresh eyes, with clear hearts again, and we will get back into the business of talking about what's true. Until then, we'll pray for each other. I always tell my kids, make sure that you pray for patience with others, but also patience with yourself. So we'll see you then. God bless you. See you on Monday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.